Hello again. This is a follow-up to my video on installing my LG mini split system. If you want to check out that video, it's called LG 60K branch box mini split system install. Should be on my channel. This is a follow-up that is going to go over the breakdown on my energy usage before and after. There are a couple key differences in the before and after on different electrical loads that I've also added to the house. Unfortunately, I do not have all of the years from before and after I installed it, so we're just going to have to go based off of these three time frames here. So I installed the system based on my receipt from eComfort that I've looked up. I ordered it on April 1st, 2019, which means I probably got it installed somewhere in late 2019 is what we'll say. So right over in this area here. So the year before, you can see June, I was right around 1,000 kilowatt hours. July, in between June and July, went up to, it looks like just about 1,300 kilowatts. And then I peaked at about 1,500 kilowatts for both August and, well, I guess that's technically July into August and then August into October. And then we dropped back down. You can see the temperature, outside temperature dropped down too. So that all came down. Not exactly sure what was going on here, why I was using a ton of energy, but apparently that isn't quite the same anymore. And then this goes into the next year here. So over here is where I installed it. I know I got it running before the summer heat kicked in. So my best guess would be I got it installed somewhere in this region of time over here. Probably May, maybe late May, early June. Unfortunately, I don't have the data from June 2019 to June 2020, so we're just going to have to miss that year. In that time frame, I got a exterior hot tub, so in the winter, especially around here, it gets nice and cold. So you can see here, averages what, 26, 23, 15 degrees. I mean, it gets pretty cold during the winter. So I do have an exterior hot tub. It's like a 6 to 7 person hot tub. So it's a fairly big one. It's an older one, so it's not as efficient as what it should be. Probably doesn't have as good of insulation as what would be expected on the newer hot tubs. So I got a hot tub in that time frame. So that adds some electrical usage. However, during the summer, that's kind of minimal because with the cover on and the insulation it does have, it really doesn't run that much during the summer, and it's not really trying to keep the water that hot during the summer. So for summertime, we'll kind of call that negligible. For wintertime, that's when it really comes into effect. So far, I have not used this mini split system for heating. I have just started doing that this winter. So technically starting right here, August to October, that is my first month of using it as a heat pump for heating the house. So my normal winter usage or cold temperature usage, like this time frame here, none of that is from the mini split system. Actually, I guess from here all the way to about here. So none of that is actually from the mini split system. I only usually turn it on as soon as it gets above 70 outside. I'll turn it on. As soon as it gets below 70, consistently, I'll turn it off. During the summer, I like to keep most of the house at around 70 to 72, and I keep my bedroom around 66 degrees. And I just roll with that for the whole summer. I don't change it or have it on any timers to where it will turn off when I leave or whatnot. Even when I go on vacation, I just leave it running as is. I don't really worry about it too much. If you wanted to get better efficiency, you could most definitely get the wireless, the Wi-Fi enabled Wi-Fi card things for them. They're $100 a piece. You have to get one for each system, that each interior air handler that you have. Plugs right in, and then it will connect to your Wi-Fi. Then you can control everything on your phone. You can have it set even to like your Google location, to where when you leave the house, it'll automatically set the temperature to either higher or lower based on time of year and what kind of heating mode or cooling mode it's in. So it will change it based on your location, and on your way back home, it'll instantly kick on and start cooling down. So those are available. I know that it's on eComfort. I've looked into getting them. It's very tempting. It probably could save me a decent amount of money, but I just haven't done it. I don't mind paying extra just to leave it running all the time. So with all of that being said, let's dive into the numbers here a little bit. So like I was saying before, in June I peaked out around 1,500 kilowatts, and this is for July to August and August to basically October. It says that the average temperature was around 70. I kind of doubt that. Summers around here usually average in the 80s. We get some days that are up in the 90s, even some days up in the hundreds. I guess that's taking into account nights as well, but even the nights don't usually get down below 70. It's usually always above 70 for outside air temperature in these months here. But I guess it's like that on pretty much every one of these graphs. So maybe that is the average temperature. Regardless, during summer months, we're looking at around 1,500, 1,300 kilowatt hours. So that's total kilowatts used. In 2020 and 2021, can't really see the 2020 part over here, but the 2021 over here, it looks like during peak months here, we were sitting right around maybe 1,300 kilowatts. So pretty much like this, maybe a little bit less across the board. What I was using for cooling here was only 2 window units. So I was only able to cool the downstairs kitchen and the bedroom. Those were the only 2 areas that I had cooled. The entire upstairs was sitting around, I think it was like 90, 95 sometimes up in that upstairs areas. It was miserable because that's where the only place that we had a bathroom at the time was upstairs. So it was hot. That area was uncooled. We had to open up the windows a lot up there. And we were only cooling two areas with this, even the downstairs, like the living room and all that area, with just the 1 window unit cooling that kind of area. It was, at best 80s. Never really dropped down in the 70s. The bedroom we were able to keep fairly cool because we had a window unit dedicated to the bedroom, so that was able to actually get down into the 70s. But that one was pretty much running all the time, and the one in the kitchen was pretty much running all the time. So that was between 2 window units was pulling that much juice. And then over here in 2020, this is when we actually had the mini split system installed. Well, we had it installed here in 2019, but in 2021 here we had the window unit, or not the window unit, the LG mini split system operational, and we had a hot tub going, and my usage looks like it looks just about 1300 for those 3 months there. 1300 kilowatt hours. If you move over here into the 2021, so that would be from here to here, so that looks like 1300. Drops off pretty quick there because temperature's going down. And then here in 2022, we've had a pretty good year. The temperatures look pretty similar to these guys here, but it looks like we're down below maybe even 1100 kilowatt hours here and about 1200 there. So looks like we have a little bit less power usage. Now my guess would be because I've had my computer turned off a lot more these months than I have in the past, and my computer is very power hungry. So not having the computer running all the time, that is probably causing what the dip in energy usage that you're seeing here. But to reiterate, here in 2018, we had 2 window units. The house was only one room, I'll say, was in the 70s. The rest of it was 80s or higher. And we were pulling a lot of megawatts, or kilowatts, not megawatts. I guess technically megawatts. We were drawing a lot of kilowatts here, whereas here we have the entire house cooled all of the time, and even like I said, the bedroom I'm keeping at 66 degrees, and the whole upstairs is all 72, downstairs is all 70, 72. It's very comfortable, and we're pulling less than what we were here with the 2 window units. So I've definitely seen a very, very steep decrease in, I guess not a steep decrease in power usage, but when you compare it to the quality of life that I was getting here versus here, and actually using less power, I'll take this any day. So for other things that I want to talk about in this video, like I mentioned here, I am starting to use the mini split system for heat this year specifically. I did not use it here. Looks like right now we're pretty much at the same point, but the temperature is a little bit higher here, so it hasn't had to work as hard. Started using it for heat. The reasoning being is that natural gas prices are, at least in my current area, last year at this time it was at 54 cents per therm. I'm not exactly sure what that equates to in cubic feet, but that's the measurement that NICOR gives us. So in October 2021, it was 54 cents per therm, and today on my last bill, which I literally just got yesterday, it was at $1.24 per therm. So my gas bill usually, because I have a high efficiency boiler, my gas bill usually runs about 150 $150 during the winter. Well, if that trend was to continue based off the usage from last year to this year, we would be looking at more like a $300 to $350, maybe even a $400 bill, because natural gas prices have gone up that far. I'm going to keep an eye on the gas prices, and if they do drop, I will most likely switch back to my boiler, partially because of efficiency, but probably more so just because I do like the boiler heat a little bit better. Having the radiators, and they hold heat really well, and it gives off a really nice heat that doesn't dry out the air. So if I were to have lower gas prices, I probably would still use the boiler, depending on how much it is per therm versus how much I'm willing to pay extra for that. So we'll see how that works for the winter as far as energy usage. One thing that I did have to do, because my unit is installed directly onto that pad. If you want to see how it's installed, you can go look at my other video. Again, LG 60K branch box mini split system install, and it will show you how I installed it. But the condenser is placed directly on the ground. The reason why I did that was because it's basically a double size condenser, and I didn't want to mount it on the side of my house. That was going to be a lot of weight, and like I said, I was doing most of this by myself. I did have my dad there helping me out a little bit for muscle, but he's an older guy, so trying to lift that up while getting the brackets all installed, yeah, not for us. So my solution to preventing the water from freezing in the bottom of it and not draining, and so if you haven't heard about this, there's a problem that if you install it directly on the ground, when your mini split system goes into its defrost mode in the winter, it melts off the ice that builds up on the actual fins. That then drips down, and it's supposed to drain from the bottom of the mini split system. If you have it mounted on the ground, that area can get kind of covered in snow, and then once it gets covered in snow, that water will drain down, but then it will freeze in the bottom. And then after X amount of layers of that water drips down, freezes, it can pinch the fins of the condenser coil and actually push them into the copper tubes that run through there. When that happens, it can cause it to basically put pinhole leaks into your condenser coils. So to avoid that, what I did is I found online. Originally, my plan was that I was going to use that heat tape stuff that you use for like gutters and roofs. Unfortunately, the smallest length that I could find was like 30 feet. And I'm not going to buy a 30 feet roll of this stuff to run through the bottom of my mini split system. And then I'm going to have, 20 feet left over that you can't cut the stuff. It's supposed to be one long strip. And so I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I found on Amazon they have a heating pad that's intended for a 50-gallon fresh water tank that it's supposed to keep it from freezing. And it says that it's good for up to like negative something odd degrees. Doesn't really matter, because for my purposes, what I did is I put it in the bottom of the mini split system inside the condenser unit. The fans have plenty of clearance in between it. It has an adhesive on the part that has the heating elements, and on the back of it, it has like a foam insulation. So I placed that into the bottom of my condenser and ran the cord outside of the condenser unit, so I can just plug that in to an extension cord when it gets below freezing outside. And then underneath of the mini split system, I put foam insulation. It's not the spray-on cut type, but like the pink cut your own shape and size insulation pads. And I put some of that directly underneath of the mini split system, so that when I have this water heater pad plugged in, it will heat the bottom metal plate of the condenser, and then when the water drips down and tries to go through the drainage holes, hopefully that metal will be warm enough that it will not freeze at those drainage holes. I think that it's going to work because it's like a 26 by 18 inch pad, and it uses like 85 watts when it's plugged in. Again, it has the insulation on the backing of it, and I put insulation underneath of it so that that heat won't get just completely dispersed by any wind that goes by it. And hopefully that's going to keep just the bottom plate warm enough that no ice will form. And I'm more than willing to spend the extra money to have that in there if it's not going to cause an issue with my coils freezing and then getting damaged. And looking into it, if I was to run that heating pad for an entire month straight, it's going to use 61 kilowatts. So realistically, if we're looking at our graphs over here, you know, it's only going to add in a blip on here, not even 100 kilowatts for a month of it running. So to me, that's not a big deal. I had a couple things that I want to talk about as far as maintenance that I've done on it so far. One of the things I did is I went around and cleaned out all of the air handlers on the inside of the house. You'd be surprised at how filthy that little filter gets, but at least with these LG handlers, they've made it very convenient to pop that off. You can open up the front, you can see all the coils. If you need to get anything in there to clean the coils, it's pretty easy to get in there and clean the coils. And all of the fans have either a small filter that it's pretty breathable, but it does collect. I mean, it collects a lot of dust, and it does keep. I haven't noticed since I've been using it. I haven't noticed like any sort of, you know, larger amount of dust in the house or anything like that. It seems like it keeps pretty good quality air going through it. But these filters on my units, are at least the downstairs ones, are on the top of it, so dust is going to naturally get on there. So I cleaned those out. Best way that I figured how to do that, if you aren't worried about getting it perfectly clean, you can use an air compressor with a like a blowout tool, and you can just sit there and blow air through it, and it just blows all of the crud off of it. If you want to get it really clean, use some sort of a fine brush, like a toothbrush, or you know, something a little bit bigger than that. But you don't want to go too hard on these filters because they are connected to the frame just with glue. So if you push too hard on them, you could easily push it off of the frame, and it probably would still work just fine, but it's also not going to look as nice. So that's why I would recommend using the air. It does a pretty good job. It gets almost everything off, and you don't have to worry about getting it off of the frame or whatnot like that. As far as the interior of my downstairs units, they have held up very well. I haven't seen any like real crud on the inside of them, so I didn't even actually have to clean the coils or anything like that. All that was all good, and the all of the drainage has been working just fine, especially since I fixed that one loop. If you remember from my previous video, in the basement, I didn't have it angled quite right, and it was building up like a water slug in there that was kind of making like a loop seal where then it would overflow out the unit. Well, since I corrected that, haven't had a single issue with water drainage. It's all been totally fine, and that's been working really good. As far as the exterior unit, I have cleaned that out a couple times. I've gone a couple different ways on trying to do it. The first time that I cleaned it, I think, was probably in 2020. So it was probably late 2020, early 2021. It had probably been a good year and a half since I had the unit, and I was worried that we were going to have that I was going to not be able to get cleaned out and all that good stuff. So the way that I initially tried doing that was with a power washer, and I would not recommend that. It worked. You had to be really careful not to hit the fins at any sort of an angle. So as soon as you did that, you could kind of see them start to deflect, and if you went at too much of an angle, I'm sure they would have just bent right over. But I used a power washer, and I just kind of went up and down, went right with the grain of the fins, basically, the direction of the fins, so that water just blew through, and it worked pretty well. If you looked on the back, there was definitely spots where it didn't work so great, and then the real reason why I wouldn't recommend it, not only can you bend the fins, but when you go to finish cleaning it off, all of that gunk that you just blew out now is all wet, and so it sticks onto the fins on the back a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a pain in the ass to really get cleaned up. So with that being said, my recommendation is probably using an air compressor again with a air blower tool, and just blast air from the side of the fan to the backside, and just slowly blast air through there and just work your way down. You'll get most of the stuff off, and then after that you can go to the other side. I bought a couple of these nylon brushes that were like, maybe 6 inches long, but it was just a very thin like brush basically. So it was only like, maybe a half a centimeter wide. And I used that and slowly just raked all of the fins, and that was able to get all the rest of the gunk out. That worked really well. I did it that way in 2022, right around this region. When you do clean it out, make sure that, so I did it probably the wrong way. I just turned off all my interior units, because then there's no demand, the fans don't kick on. The proper way to do it would be to go and turn the breaker off for the unit and then go and clean it out. Another thing I did as far as maintenance is I did clean out inside the computer housing area for the condenser unit outside. Spiders love to make nests in there, so you got to open that up every once in a while and clean it out. Realistically, they're probably not going to do anything to the inside of it that's going to cause damage, but it's always good to get it cleaned out, get that stuff out of there. Can cause overheating, and technically it could cause shorts, because you are talking about 220 volts. So clean that stuff out. Be very careful when you do, or trip the breaker, turn it off so that you can clean in there safely and not have to worry about potentially shorting out 220 and maybe even killing yourself, because that is very high voltage. Not really high voltage, but it's high voltage for home applications. Let's see. Other than that, another thing that I did want to talk about was the louvers. So I don't know if this is pretty common on most mini split systems. I didn't really know this at the beginning. I kind of should have expected it, but the little louvers on both the downstairs units, the wall mounted ones, and the cassettes that I have upstairs, they do make some noise when they're actuating. Sometimes it can get annoying. Most of the time I just kind of ignore it and don't care about it, and that seems to work all right. I have noticed now, of course, that I have a mini split system. I've noticed them when I go places. I've noticed most places I go, if they have a mini split system, the noisiest thing on it is going to be the little louvers that they have on it. I don't know what it is. It's probably because they have a little motor that runs on I'm guessing that there's a gear changer in there, and it has to actuate and all that good stuff. So it does get a little noisy. Originally, when I first got them, they were all totally silent, couldn't hear a thing. But it just kind of seems like the older they get, the more you can kind of hear that noise of the little louvers going. Still a heck of a lot quieter than a traditional HVAC system that has a big blower and all that stuff. Still a lot quieter than that. You don't hear it as much. You really don't hear the air blowing or feel the air blowing as much, but it's doing that constant maintenance of the temperature in the room at a low speed, so you don't hear it and you don't feel like a breeze on you all the time. It's one of the main things that people like about the mini split systems, and one of the main things I really like. So that was most of the things I wanted to cover. Now there's a couple questions in my last video that I figured I would just kind of touch on. One person asked if using the branch box attachments, if they could turn a 2 or a 4 zone into a 6 or a 12 zone or something of that example. Honestly, I don't know. I think you probably could, but I think it would be a bad idea. You're going to be taking a system that's designed for X amount of BTUs and X amount of refrigerant move, like it can only move so much refrigerant. And so if you are going to be taking one of these smaller zones and hooking it up to one of these smaller condensers and hooking it up to a whole bunch of zones, you have to put a lot more refrigerant in there, and it's going to have to try to move all of that. So you're probably going to run into issues where your return pressure is way too low and it can't maintain the system. And that's why I would not recommend that, at least from just my basic understanding of coolant loops. Also, that being said, I am not a licensed HVAC person. I've never actually worked in the industry, so everything that I say, take it as just a lessons learned from me and how I personally would go about things, not how you should. If you want to do a project like this, you need to research it yourself. Make sure that you get a hold of the proper people that can really help you out with your project. The other one that I got was multiple. Would it be better to get multiple smaller units to get better efficiency out of your total system? I honestly don't know on that one. What I will say is that when I was looking at smaller units on the eComfort page, it looked like they had lower SEER ratings. So they weren't going to be as efficient as the one, or while they were operating, they wouldn't be as efficient as the larger unit. Now, that being said, what this guy was kind of hinting at was if you have, 2 or 3 smaller units rather than one bigger unit, well, then maybe the condenser doesn't have to kick on as much because both units that need to be on are on one condenser, and then both units that aren't operating are on the other condenser, and you can kind of regulate temperature that way. But realistically, these things aren't going to behave exactly how, it's not going to be where they both kick on at the same time and they both kick off at the same time. And these condensers are designed to be, they have the inverter technology basically. So they don't power on 100% and then power off 100%. They follow a curve of demand power based on how many units are running and how much Freon it has to pump. So I don't know if you'd gain any efficiency out of that, is my best answer to that. But you would be probably paying for your efficiency with extra breakers in your breaker box, having to maintain more condensers, and having more line sets going into your house. With the way that I have it, you know, you got the one line set going to the basement, one line set going into the attic, and then 3 smaller line sets in both the attic and the basement that go to the units. If I was to try and do that with a bunch of outdoor condensers, you'd be running much larger runs, and they'd all be on the outside of the house, so wouldn't look as nice either. But that is just my opinion on that. And again, I don't know if you'd really gain any efficiency. And again, if you're looking at my energy usage, and I know I use a lot of power. Part of that's because my house has no insulation in it whatsoever. So all of my electrical usages are going to be higher than the average person, I believe. But based on, again, the June 2018 and the September 2021, I mean, I'm using less energy and cooling the entire house. I'm not sure how worried you are about efficiency, about how much extra. I mean, you might be able to save 100 kilowatts, maybe more. I don't know, but this is just a first step of getting more efficient, is going from window units to this. So I'm happy where I'm at. Another question that I got a lot of was if I lost my warranty by installing it myself, and I'm sure that I did. It's just the way that all of these manufacturers work. They all advertise as, oh yeah, it's DIY, it's DIY, it's DIY, until it comes to the warranty, and then in that they almost always specifically say, if you install this yourself, then you lose your warranty. The only one that might not do that is Mr. Cool, and that's because they have done more for the DIY mini-split systems than any of these other companies. And so they might, I don't even know, I haven't looked at this, I haven't researched it, but if there's one company that probably would still offer a warranty, even though you're doing it yourself, would probably be Mr. Cool. That being said, very happy to go with my LG system. And again, knock on wood, but it's been, 3-4 years now, and 3 years, and I haven't had an issue yet. I swear every time when I go out there in the spring to turn it on and start getting the air conditioning going, like, is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? And then it works just fine. Like, oh, okay, well, I worried about nothing then. But yeah, the warranty. It was a calculated risk, is all I can say. Based off of how much it would cost for me to have a professional install it, and then also based off of how long would that warranty be good for. I mean, if that warranty is only good for 5 years, I'm already almost there. So what it runs into is it worth risking the potential of having to either replace a part or get it serviced somehow, versus paying the extra to have a professional install it. For me, that was a no-brainer. I would rather, if something were to go wrong, try and fix it myself or replace a part. I would much rather do that than pay the insane amount that the contractors were trying to charge me on this. Because again, I think I said it in my last video, my first quote was for $18,500 for 5 zones, and they want to do 5 condensers outside with 5 interior units, which would mean 5 220 breakers, 5 220 lines, 5 line sets going up the side of my house. That was just insane to me. And then to do something more like what I did, with having 1 outdoor condenser and 6 indoor units, and having branch box system, I was told that would be at least 30 grand. So it was well worth it for me to spend the time to actually do it myself than it was to, worry about a potential warranty issue. I also saw a lot of people ask questions about problems with startup, whether or not they have issues with the LEDs not functioning correctly, the system not starting up correctly, all that good stuff. The best information I can give you is look at the installation manual that comes with it. Sometimes it's not in the box with it. Sometimes you have to go to the website of the place that you bought it from to find the actual troubleshooting steps. You have to go to the website and they'll have like a downloadable PDF. I downloaded both the PDFs and I also got physical copies with my system, and I was able to find all sorts of information in there. From there's switches on the inside. It has to be in a specific sequence for it to actually function properly, and you can change that sequence depending on whether you're using it for heating, for cooling, if you want it in automatic, all sorts of stuff. If you want it in eco mode, there's all sorts of different alignments that you can do with those switches, and they have nothing on the inside that would indicate to you what they're actually for. Mine came already set up for automatic operation. Doesn't mean everyone's does. So go to that manual, find those switches, and it will tell you what sequence it needs to be in. And that's the best information I can give you on that. If you're having issues with a unit not working, before you freak out, make sure that you check your wiring. Check your color codes on your wires. I follow the same color coding my entire way through, and you should as well, and you should write it down on a sheet of paper that says this one is used for this spot, this one's used for this spot. And then that way, when you get to your next one, you can pull out that sheet of paper, which I recommend because we all make those mistakes where you sit there and think, oh yeah, no, I know this one goes there. And then later you look at it and you're like, oh, I had that backwards. Make sure every time you're pulling out that sheet of paper and looking at what your color coding is and what ones it's supposed to go to. That's the best I can tell you on troubleshooting this stuff, because as far as it goes with the actual circuit boards, I can't help you with that. The only thing I can say is check your wiring, check the switches in your condenser. If all of that is all how it's supposed to be based on the manuals, well then that's when you need to either get somebody else involved, talk to somebody who installs them, or you can probably even get a hold of, like for me, I bought mine through eComfort, can get a hold of the people through eComfort and talk to them about your problem. And they were as helpful as they could be when I contacted them, because I tried to contact them about the initial charge and the vacuum pole for my condenser, and they basically said, look, we wish we could help you out. Unfortunately, we don't have any service techs, and we don't have any affiliated service techs in your area, so you kind of got to figure that one out on your own. But they were more than happy to help me troubleshoot things if I had anything that needed to be troubleshooted. At least that's what the guy that I was talking to said. And they know the systems that they're selling pretty well. They know the manuals very well, and they can actually probably get a hold or get you in touch with the direct manufacturer if you really have an issue. So my recommendation, if you need to troubleshoot your system, it's not starting up properly, get a hold of whoever sold it to you and see if they can get you in touch with the actual supplier. Well, that was everything that I want to talk about today. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope all of this information helped somebody out. Have a good one.